This is a little update on the new studio that's being built up on the hill. So the basic footings have started to be done today. This is about putting drainage pipe in there now for like a French drain around the outside of the actual foundation. So this is the actual footings, which are now done. We now have to wait for them to inspect and make sure it's done properly. There is a drainage pipe there. I'm going to have a drain in the middle of the floor, so if I want to mop the floor I can use a squeegee to push the water out the drain. And also, because I'm on the side of a hill here, if I ever get flooded, I can actually, the drain in the floor will just take the water right out. Okay, today I closed my eyes. Actually, I went into town for an hour, do some shopping, and when I came back, this was done. So I don't know how fast they can do this, but they did it pretty fast. So I guess we're waiting on another inspection now, because this is the first layer of the ICF. That's right, insulated concrete forms. But so we will have a frost wall here, and then it'll go up and they're going to pour concrete in it, so it's double insulated wall, which is what the gallery was built like, and it is just so amazingly sort of tight as far as losing any heat. Good morning, this is Vaughan at westcoatbellpottery.ca in Nova Scotia, Canada. I've been doing my 10 videos introducing new people to pottery, and that's going to be completing sometime in July, and this is the mid-June now. So I'm going to start some new videos on how to make things. Today is going to be utensil jars, and it involves throwing taller form and 3 pounds of clay, just under 3 pounds. I always clean my bats on the wheel because I can wet them, and as they're spinning, scrape the clay off rather than scraping dry clay off in the studio and causing dust. So there's a tip for you. No dust. Yeah, think about that. After you've had 52 years in making pottery, you've been breathing a lot of dust all your life. So I'm taking a lot more care at my age now than I used to when I was young, but it's always good to start as young as you can. So I've got, let's drive my hand down a bit, never bang clay when you've got wet hands. But if it's a bigger piece of clay, you might as well round it off a little bit while it's easy like this. And then find a crease-less spot that you can bang it down on the wheel so you don't trap a little air or crack in there. Bang it down a couple of times. This is a Pacifica wheel, so it's an older wheel. I don't think they make these anymore. I think it was the old Creative Industries became Pacifica wheels. But anyway, that's just under 3 pounds of clay. So it's nice and firm. It's banged down onto a damp wheel head so we know it's stuck. And then it's about, this wheel that I have doesn't have a wall next to it for centering, so it's a little harder. I have to press harder basically. This is my demo wheel for the summer. The summer kind of started early this year. We've had 2 good weeks of sales in the gallery, and it's only early June. We've been selling some larger pieces too. There you go. So coning, and then pushing down, making sure you don't fold any clay. So my left hand is trying to prevent little flaps of clay sticking through my fingers, and then folding them in on themselves, and then you create little air pockets. And center down, And really try, for tall pieces, you really got to try and make it perfectly centered. And then dribble hot water on and just poke a hole, feel for that center point and push down. If you feel it's off center, don't go any further, sort of flatten out again and then go down. But you really got to try and make sure that hole is in the center and push down. Leave about ½ centimeter from the bottom and pull out. As long as it's slippery, it's drying out, so I'm going to put some water in there. As long as it's lubricated, keep pulling and then slow down and stop. There's a little dome there, so I'm going to flatten that out. It's good to compression into that center area there. If you're going to get throwing cracks in the center of your base, it's because you don't have enough compression and so good to literally go from the corner and push right over to the center, pushing a little nipple there and then squishing it down so it compresses it. And then wet it, move to the other side. Now my right arm is resting on my thigh, pushing in and go fast up so you're not letting it dry out underneath your fingers, because that will pull it off center. See how dry it is down there? So if I had hung around, it would just pull it off center. That's the biggest issue for people who are beginners, is they go too slow on the pull up the wall and it dries out. Now once again, I've got to go fairly fast so that I one revolution, basically I'm higher up, and so I'm staying on a wet spot. Some clays dry even faster than others. I've noticed that certain of my clays, I have to pull the wall faster than other ones. Not sure why that is. Look how much slip came off my hand. Wet it from the top inside and out so it's dribbling all the way down, both wall in and out. Same again, a nice pull that goes fast. Press deep with the outside fingers. And pull up. A little ripple started there because I hung about too much. I'm going to go back and just make that. So if you see a ripple, don't keep pulling. It means I hung around a little long on that little area there. And I can usually get away with pulling again, and I might have to go back and flatten the ripple again, but at the moment it's okay. There's a little bit where I keep my eye on that. If you watch my beginner videos, you'll see how to get rid of that easily, and I'm going to do it in a minute. It means it thinned a little bit too much at that point when I did that, but it's not over thin. So to get rid of it altogether, is you just use that metal rib, push from the inside against it, and you can totally get rid of that ripple. See, it's not over thin because you can get rid of it easily. If you really hung around too much, it would be probably a lost pot. Now, I know that it wasn't as thin up there, so I'm going to start to pull there and pull up. Now, these clay pieces will shrink about 1.5 inches during the drying and firing, and I'm going to belly them so they will shrink in height. They're a little tall at this point for a utensil jar. Don't thin the top, keep a nice big area, because people throw their spoons in. You don't want it to chip easily. Okay, so now I'm going to belly it out and it will start shrinking. Because if you make the width more, then it's pulling from the height. That's a lot of clay to be pulling off too. It's just the slip created by the friction of your hand. Same again. Belly out the bottom. It'll pull the height down quite a bit. I let go very gently there because I didn't need to belly out the upper part, but I wanted to continue it. And now I'm going to take the water off from that point there where I'll have a double rim. Pull down. So I'm actually going in reverse. I'm still pushing out from the inside to make a belly. There you go. That feels fairly happy. Happy pot. Alright, so I've been doing my beginner videos every 2 weeks. Well, I did them mostly at the same time, pretty much, but I want to give you 2 weeks between to actually experiment and practice with that information in the video before you move to the next video. But of course, once they're published, you can go at your own time frame, because they should complete in July. Now, the top, I'm going to work on a little bit to make it a little bit more defined. Dig the edge of the corner of the rib in there. I'm going to press in deep. Drags the water off, but also makes it belly out more. Then reverse the rib. Put that corner in there to define that part too. And that's pretty much it. Got to get the water out. There you go, and pull that all the way up to the top. And that's it. That's a nice big utensil jar. use a leather at that point, but I don't need to. This clay is very smooth. And then use the sponge just to get any extra water out of that little area there. And clean it up. Always clean your bat up. Don't take a bat off the wheel when it's covered in water. It'll make your piece take longer to dry anyway that way, with all that moisture evaporating from below the piece. And that's a nice jar. That could be a canister too. So we've got a utensil jar, or it could be a canister. If you want to make a canister, you just measure the top. There we go, just get that there. And then we throw a lid. These white bats I have are a little flexible, so I have to be careful when I lift them that they don't bend the pot too much. I made these bats with a friend of mine. He did all the work. Look at that. Nice profile there. Okay, I'm going to now throw a lid for the jars that you just saw me throw. So it's basically just centering a small piece of clay. This is about a pound, just under a pound of clay probably. And the way I do it is I push my finger down, not in the center, but about an inch and a bit just past the center, and push right down almost to the bottom. Leave a little thicker area than you would if you were making a pot, just to make the lid a bit more durable. And then you push underneath with your middle finger, and then with your first finger of your left hand, you just kind of push over the top of your middle finger, so you can create this little knob. And you don't have to make a sort of shape like this. You could just make it into a round ball and just have that. But I've always found that if you're lifting a lid, it's nice to put your fingers underneath the actual rim, so it lifts easier. And you can even shape it a bit, as you see there. Then you're using my middle finger just to push out a little bit to actually get the size of the lid as close as possible by eye for the actual caliper measurement that I took. Now I'm pushing my middle finger underneath to create that lip, and then I'll use my first finger again just to spread that clay out across the top of my middle finger on the right hand, so that we have a flange that will set down on top of the jar with the actual flange going inside the jar. Get all the water off fast so that the clay doesn't keep softening down. And now we see how good I was. It's a little bit small. Maybe it needs to go out a little bit. I'm not sure. It's not much. Just a tiny bit bigger. Because you want to make sure the lid isn't too loose, but if you get it too tight, the glaze actually has a thickness to it as well. So when you put the glaze on the piece, because I glaze and put stilts underneath the pieces, so I glaze everything, and then that takes up a bit of thickness as well. So I'm trying to be as accurate as possible at this point, but I always like to leave a little extra clay on the actual flange going down to the bat. That way I can trim it off later on and get a slightly better measurement and fitting. And then just make sure you get all the water off the piece. And I use the sponge instead of a leather because this clay is just so smooth. And then make yourself a little spiral if you want to as a decorative element. And that's basically a lid.